do or not do to get through. I think it is pretty respective of their performance this season.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, perhaps we've all been a little bit too guilty of just talking about the differences in Division A and Division B and the seeding that you got based on your Swiss performance, just in terms of how likely you were to get relegated. But we're also seeing now just it has massive implications of your overall chances of making Worlds as well, just for how easy your route is through that playoff bracket. Contrast Ball Control, who won Division A and therefore has just played one series of Hearthstone, and now he's through to Sunday and playing for that spot at Worlds, with a Bozzzton who has already played a play-in match to get to this point, and even after winning that is still massively disadvantaged in the bracket in comparison to someone like Ball Control, who has a much superior record over the main season. So you can see the big implications of how much those Swiss rounds matter, and maybe people weren't used to that, quite getting the scope of how much each of those Swiss rounds mattered as we went into it, and it really only became apparent as the round robin weeks went on, and now as this week occurs, just how much that really did have an impact on players' overall season. But I think going into Season 2 of 2020, I think everyone's going to have a much deeper understanding of how much every single match in that Swiss round matters.
Yeah, and for now we are going to be going into that lower match. Bozzzton versus Seiko. The loser, they're still safe in Grandmasters, don't you worry, but it does mean they are not going to be able to go in through to Sunday and continue to fight for a spot at Worlds. They have to try again next season, but these players are safe, just as a reminder. But Bozzzton, we're going to see, I think, a similar set of matchups to what we saw earlier in the day of Bunnyhopper versus Seiko. Bozzzton has effectively the same lineup to be going against Seiko's kind of not off-the-wall lineup. That sounds like he's bringing something completely crazy, but he is bringing the Priest and the Quest
Paladin.
There you go. We can talk about that later. But the Priest and the Quest Warlock, whereas Bozzzton is just bringing Rogue and Highlander Hunter, which is for me, much more just steadier lineup overall.
Yeah, and honestly, it really goes to show that Seiko's lineup was really not in a good position in the group that he was put into. Because we talked about how many potential favourables Bunnyhopper had going up against Seiko in one direction, multiple good favourable matchups for each of his decks. Well, Bozton's just pretty much in exactly the same position. Yep. He does have a less chunky build of Rogue, let's call it, a few less threats to be able to consolidate boards against Quest Warlock and Priest alike. So Bozzzton might be losing a few percentage points on his Rogue in comparison to Bunnyhopper in the previous series, but I think he still does have pretty solid matches across the board.
Yeah, and he's also still rocking the Mana Saber, Maiev Shadow Song, Boom Pistol Bully build of the Hunter. So he's been sticking to that for quite a while now in Grandmasters, honestly. Whereas Seiko, we've already seen him play once today, but he has had a reasonably sized break to just collect himself and get ready for this next match. Is on that Quest Warlock and a very standard version of Galakron Priest. But just to echo what you're saying, you just look at it and you see that the bonuses for Bozzzton and the problems that Seiko can run into. Feels like he's going to get a win with that Demon Hunter if he chooses to queue it, but honestly, the Quest Warlock and the Priest are all question marks as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and certainly we're not counting Seiko out of this. Priest is capable of winning anything. It's just the nature of the deck. Quest Warlock really kind of similar. And honestly, the matchups that Quest Warlock is facing here, I think Rogue is absolutely fine. But then Warrior and Hunter, while they're unfavorables, I don't consider them bad matchups. They're certainly, slightly the wrong side of 50% for me. But it's still, very winnable inherently. So Seiko, I don't think he's in as bad a position as he was against Bunnyhopper, just because of the minute differences in the way the classes are built. But he does certainly have to be approaching the same problems as Bunnyhopper presented him.
Yeah, well, we are going to go straight into game number 1. Bozzzton on that Warrior, which is the Pain variant, and Seiko on his Demon Hunter. Seiko is, as you can see, running a Swamp Ooze. He's also running 2 Bone Chewer Brawlers and 1 Mana Burn in there as well. So a couple of choices there that might well help him out versus specifically Warrior. But we'll see how it pans out, as Bozzzton, on the other hand, is running a fairly standard list. The 1 Sky Raider list and 2 Korkron. I feel like that's the main difference nowadays. It's 1 or 2 Sky Raiders versus 1 or 2 Korkrons in the list.
Yeah, and it's something we talked about how Bone Chewer Brawler does protect your minions in a sort of Tar Creeper-like fashion. But reframing that in the context of exactly the Warrior matchup is very important for Seiko's lineup, because quite often you don't necessarily always get to Corsair Cash your weapon. Sometimes you just have a weapon that you play on turn 3, and in that case, that weapon has 2 attack, which means Bone Chewer Brawler is protecting all of your high-value minions from one of the most destructive tools that Warrior has in the matchup. Outside of that, there's also the question that a lot of the time, just Risky Skipper comes down on about turn 5 with 2 procs and just blows up your entire board, and then you have to completely redevelop. It often feels like if that happens and you don't have Warglaives exactly to follow up, then you are just out of the game completely. Well, now you're introducing a 3 health minion to the mix that not only resists the 2 proc Risky Skipper clear, it also grows massive and smashes your opponent in the face if they try to do it to clear the rest of your board. So I think in particular it is a pretty strong build against Warrior, and I think, you know, just the other tech card in here, the Acidic Swamp Ooze, gives you some indication that beating Warrior is pretty much how this deck is put together.
Yeah, and meanwhile, I do like the way Bozzzton played the opening there. Risky Skipper on 1 to you know, the average passerby might look crazy, as the potential power of it in the late game is obviously very strong.
Yeah.
But it needed to be down to contest. He had no other options, and then using the Inner Rage to actually kill off the Bone Chewer. You see the level of respect you were talking about, right? Bone Chewer can be a problem. Bozzzton can't just leave it up, and he also doesn't want to take tons of damage, but with his Ankar now getting oozed, he is slightly running dry now. Probably wants to start getting hold of a Battle Rage at some point in the near future.
Yeah, Bozzzton gave that ooze the full stank face on his side. Like, he was not pleased at all. And I think there was a big reason why. Oh my goodness, that is the nuts.
Wow.
The actual stone cold cashews, Raven. I was going to say, like, the reason he was so happy to just play his Risky Skipper out is that he had Ankar locked and loaded to pick up the second one, right? So playing Skipper and just Inner Raging it and contesting board felt fine because he was going to get through to it. He does, of course, know that his opponent plays an ooze, but they don't necessarily have to have it in the early game. But the ooze really shut down essentially his whole hand. But honestly, the 2 draws, Warmaul Challenger off the top is huge because it actually gives him something to fight for board that isn't a weapon, which is few and far between in Warrior. And then just the roll off the Sky Raider is the absolute nuts in this scenario to be able to get that Ankar back and find his second Risky Skipper now.
Yeah, and you can see how this is going to start to piece together, right? The Warmaul Challenger comes down, and always a problem for Demon Hunter because, yes, it's a 1/9, but Demon Hunter struggles dealing tons of damage that easily to single minions. But Seiko kind of has to, right? Like, you can't really just ignore this Warmaul, and we might even see a bump with the ooze just to lower some of that health down a little bit.
Yeah, this is a play that it did take me a couple of reps to figure out, is that you don't actually want to remove the biggest minion most of the time with Warmaul Challenger, unless it's a must-kill target. For example, Satyr Overseer, right? Like, you'll just kill that with your Warmaul Challenger if it's the only target. It's better to just bump a 1/1 or a small minion with it and just have that huge health pool left over on the board, because your opponent will almost invariably, if you're playing at a high level, do this against you, where they just start to sink damage back into your Warmaul Challenger anyway. So essentially, your Warmaul Challenger just keeps attacking the bigger minions anyway, because your opponent's doing it for you. So you can just play it out on the board and kill the small one.
Yeah, it's just switching the effect, right? It's instead of you killing off using one of your cards to kill off your opponent's biggest threat, you make your card the biggest threat on the board instead, and then that causes them to have to deal with it. So it feels weird because a lot of the time Warmaul's like a removal tool, especially against small minion-based aggro decks. But yeah, I do like it overall. But now the weaponry equipped for Bozzzton, the draw on the Risky Skipper is there, and suddenly Terran, Korkron, the Blood Boil Brute as well, looking mighty fine in the next couple of turns.
It's not often I pay you compliments, Raven, but that was really lovely phrasing.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Still doing phrasing?
Well, I had something for this.
Demons.
Glaive Band is going to help clean this up though and just retain some level of minion pressure, not only with the Glaive Band, but having this 2/1 now stick around is still something that Bozzzton has to deal with. Oof. This is all starting to look like a good setup for a Terran turn, isn't it?
It is, yeah. There is the slight problem of the 6/4 that needs to be dealt with, though. Can be as simple as just slamming your Korkron into it and moving on with your life. It's a legal Hearthstone play.
Yeah, I wonder, what about Corcoran, trade, egg, kill off the 2-1 with the weapon, and then next turn you're looking at like Risky Skipper, Bomb Wrangler, Terran? Is that looking good?
I don't know if you want to put that big of a board inside your Terran in this matchup. I feel like if you have that big of a board, you want to just keep that board most of the time.
Okay. It's one thing I do struggle with. I think Terran is a very difficult card to play well. Because when you overdo it, you often lose. And when you underdo it, well, I guess it depends what you define by underdoing it, but it is a little bit tricky there. So Bozzzton going to go for the Risky Skipper, Egg, Bomb Wrangler turn now, and then just save his Terran play to maybe control it a little bit more.
Yeah, I do like this, actually. I was kind of turned off from the Risky Skipper line that turn because I wanted to line it up with the Blood Boil Brute, which didn't really happen any way you sliced it that turn.
Yeah,
But I think recognizing here that, you know, Bozzzton can just generate the big board here, and that this encourages Seiko to clear up most of this mess anyway, which occupies a lot of his turn. But you are still quite likely to be left over with an egg or perhaps a bomb or some sort of small remainders of a board at the end of it, which is, I would imagine, about the perfect size to Terran in the matchup a lot of the time.
One of the positive things in the matchup as well with Terran, even if you don't get it quite right, is it's not like Demon Hunter gets to just not play minions and leave it alone a lot of the time. Like, you will find ways to trade it off. In other matchups, it can be way, way more awkward.
Yeah, this is very nice. You can see exactly what I was talking about, right? Like, this just looks like a dreamy Terran board right now.
Yeah. Corcoran as well. Well, do you think using the Battle Rage for 2 is worthwhile right now? Just because you can.
Now?
My instincts say Terran Corcoran. The Corcoran
I don't mind drawing cards now.
Dead. The Corcoran is just dead on the board to the Warglaives, though. And I'd be presuming you would Corcoran afterwards.
Oh. Yeah, you Corcoran afterwards, right?
Maybe you wouldn't. Anyway, that play didn't happen, so we could probably stop living in that world. Either way, this has got to be a Terran. It's just curious, right? Because you have a Skipper inside your Terran with a bunch of 2-held minions as well, so it feels like that Battle Rage had a pretty decent chance of drawing you like 6 cards at some point if you needed to. Whereas you had like decent ways to at least fill your mana this turn.
Mm-hmm. I guess the point is, does that just happen too late to even matter? Whereas the Corcoran is always good next turn, right? Because he's pushing so much damage.
Sure.
I think it's close, honestly. I think it's just a strong turn, whichever way you look at it, as long as you drop the Terran.
Frozen Shadow Weaver, about the best counter that Demon Hunter has to a Terran.
Especially knowing 2 Risky Skippers are gone, you know, it can't even get duplicated and made worse, right? Well, not easily get duplicated. There's, of course, Inner Rage and a couple of other things, but in general, pretty tough.
Oh, speaking of Inner Rage.
I think just like Corcoran Bomb Wrangler is more than okay here, right? Corcoran down the Shadow Weaver.
What now?
You just want to use Blood Boil Brute if you're going to make that play.
But then you don't get a Bomb Wrangler. Oh, what about Corcoran trade into the 2/2 and then Bloodswan Mercenary?
Yeah, see,
trade into the 4/3.
That's
so
what
you
I
get a
was
4/1 or
considering.
2/2 and the Terran's still on the board. That looks pretty good, actually.
That's what I was considering. And then Corcoran number 2 goes face.
Oh, you wouldn't trade?
I don't think so. 12? I don't think I'm scared of 12. I don't think I'm scared of my board dying either, though, so maybe you can just full trade.
Well, there's Grom next turn, right? So I don't know. For me, I know, again, like, the word risk is kind of weird, because you could just sit and work out.
I'm going to get annoyed by this statement, aren't I?
But I do think Grom is a pretty good safety net, right? This board is so awkward to deal with, and you have Grom on top of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the fact that the board is so obnoxious means that the trade is probably the right play, but you are absolutely right in the word safe, can be taken both ways in that regards, right? Because it's kind of safe to get extra damage into face, so you don't need to be banking on drawing an Enrage activator. You know, suddenly if you hit face, you only need like one bomb to be left alive at the end of the turn.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Since we're dealing in a world where like, how does this board actually die? Then yes, it's probably better just to trade as much as possible.
Demons. Demons.
And also, even in the most ludicrous cases, if you trade, well, Bozzzton can kind of go for the out of, well, his hero power kind of beats Seiko's, in that he could just start playing defensive, right?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to see that this matchup come down to that at some point, where they're just both out of cards and just hero powering each other into fatigue.
Do you see?
But I mean, is Bozzzton probably is, if this is cleared, okay to play a bit of a longer game based on what's in his hand and what he can draw into with arms. But there is an altruist turn in here, and there is a taunt. So, although Seiko didn't get to clear the board, he did do some good work. But it won't matter, because the trade is going to proc this, Risky Skipper's in there, that's going to proc the Grom, and that is going to be game number 1 as Bozzzton takes a win with his Warrior over Seiko's team.
Yeah, and I think, again, that's just another big reason why the situation was kind of checkmate if you trade, because if your Terran can't trade a minion, then it's probably just at full health and you get to smack face with it anyway, in which case, great, you're probably winning. If it can trade a minion, then you have your built-in activator for Grom at the end there, as you saw from Bozzzton anyway. So I think in that scenario, even though that amount of damage from hand without Metamorphosis preloaded from a Demon Hunter is nigh on impossible. So again, you can continue to have that argument over what's safe, what's necessary, what do you play around in this scenario. I think, you just pick a direction and just checkmate it in your own mind and then follow that through to its logical follow it through to its logical conclusion. And that's what Bozzzton did in that scenario.
And that's the point, right? Just execute whatever plan you want well, and don't swap, because that's when you kind of lose games sometimes. But Bozzzton does win game number 1 with his Warrior against Seiko, but we've got plenty more games coming up for the rest of this match and the rest of the day as well, as of course Americas is going to be following us up a little bit later on. But for now, we're going to go to a quick break while we get Bozzzton and Seiko ready for their game number 2. We'll be right back. We are back and ready to continue our series between Bozzzton and Seiko in the lower bracket of Group A here in playoff weekend for Hearthstone Grandmasters. Bozzzton currently 1-0 up with his Warrior against Seiko, taking a pretty strong win there. Honestly, Seiko looked like he was just pretty much pinned for the whole game. Didn't really have too much to say about that one, but there's plenty more left. So got Demon Hunter, Warlock, and his Priest left, whereas Bozzzton still now just has his Rogue, and his Hunter to go.
Sorry, I was muted. It's got to be said that the large part of that comes down to the Horde Pillager pull off the Sky Raider, because otherwise we'd be talking quite a lot about how well-teched the Demon Hunter list was for fighting against Warrior, right? Because the Bone Chewer Brawler brought out the Risky Skipper and the Inner Rage to contest board early, then the Acidic Swampoos blew up the Ankar, and it really looked like Bozzzton was going to have no way to answer the board up until that point. But like that second Risky Skipper that was found off the Ankar from the Horde Pillager from the Sky Raider, you can see how big of an impact it had, because it was still on the freaking board at the end of the game where it enraged the Grom for lethal, right? So it's a hugely impactful role for Bozzzton. I think Seiko certainly has a case that he was hard done by in that one.
Yeah, but that's why we play many games of Hearthstone here in Grandmasters, so those kind of things do even themselves out over time. Let's get into it. Bozzzton moving over to his Rogue to go up against Seiko's Demon Hunter once again. And the Rogue from Bozzzton is the, I guess, standard list, I would say, or pre-standard list of the secret package, but there are a couple of differences. The Spy Mistresses are in there as kind of just Spy Mistress. There's no payoff for the stealth. It's just a good one drop. And there are no Questing Adventurers in this list, as we are starting to get used to seeing from most Rogue players. But what do you think about this? If we could almost say a direct Spy Mistress instead of Quest Adventurers?
I do like Spy Mistress a lot, I will tell you that. You know, I talked about it in the previous series with Ore Control, where how he described it as, you know, potentially game ending on turn 1 against Hunter and potentially Demon Hunter as well. Like, that's a theory that I very much ascribe to as well. And part of the big reason why I went to bat so heavily at the start of the season for Stealth Rogue over Secret Rogue is, you know, as much as I was focused on like memeing around with Greyheart Sage being the best card in the game or whatever, like Spy Mistress was honestly, it felt like one of the most powerful cards in that deck, and just having access to that was a big reason why I liked the stealth package. But I mean, yes, it's legal to just play that card without having any payoff for it. Like, you can just have it as a 1-mana 3/1 stealth, and it's incredibly effective in certain matchups. And I think particularly when we get down to the kind of meta you're expecting here, sure, you're going to be facing against Demon Hunter, but I think Hunter is certainly high on the list of that deck 3 and deck 4 that opponents are going to be bringing as well. So I personally think it's a pretty smart choice.
Yeah, especially when Hunter's proven itself pretty much just throughout Grandmasters this season of just having and holding a solid win rate with a pretty large sample size at this point, honestly. So yeah, I like it overall, and we are going to see it draw now from Bozzzton. We are going to see if it pays off as well, but honestly, just a 1-drop that, I'm not going to say always, because that's not the case, but almost always kills a Demon Hunter minion. Seems good to me. It's kind of the kind of tool you want.
All I see is weakness.
Seal Fate here for Bozzzton as well is pretty nice, but this ambush, most importantly, is just going to add an extra minion to the board, which, again, also pretty nice for Bozzzton, keeping toe-to-toe, honestly, with Seiko's Demon Hunter this early in the game.
Yeah, and I think this is exactly why we saw the coin expended from Bozzzton on that previous turn. He had a pretty nice-looking just double 1-drop turn with Pharaoh Cat Spy Mistress, but he wanted to make sure he had enough power in play to be able to contest exactly this from Seiko, because he was shown the Twin Slice. That was second slice being used from hand, so he knows Satyr Overseer plus second slice is an expected turn from the opponent. Therefore, by creating the board state he did, well, look, it's just checkmate, right? Like, the Battle Fiend and the Satyr Overseer are just dead whichever way you slice it.
Time grows short.
And I respect Seiko's response to this to say, 3 damage to face.
Yeah.
And just to take it and say, well, Bozzzton's going... And this is, again, something you learn fairly early on in like, Hearthstone development, is if you are so confident your opponent has to trade, then why trade for them, right? Take the extra damage.
Was the absolutely wrinkled brain play there just to sacrifice your ambush minion? Just accept that your opponent found 3 damage, make the trade for them, and then leave your Spy Mistress in stealth again for the following turn?
Now we're talking. Good draw, though, for Bozzzton, and now... Oh, okay, that's a good minion. Because a lot of the time, in games like this, Demon Hunter wants to just push out raw damage in the mid to late game. The Kartuk Defender can put a pretty heavy stop to that.
Yes. How does the rest of this turn get played, though?
So many options.
I like Dirty Tricks and probably Praise Galakrond, actually, and then Dirty Tricks. Depending on...
Wait, you have to kill the 4-2, though.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. For some reason, I thought the Pharaoh Cat could attack. Goblin Lackey, then Dirty Tricks. Definitely. Never mind.
Okay. So I'm curious. I do like Dirty Tricks, because right now you don't really have a play for next turn.
Right.
So hoping your opponent casts a spell and gives you a play is pretty strong looking, but it's also just Warglave's turn, so that might not even be happening. So in that case, I'm curious about how all this sequencing works, because you could Praise Galakrond your Pharaoh Cat to get a different Lackey, to then rush into the Satyr Overseer instead. But then I guess doing it this way around is functionally the same thing. I'm not sure what the correct sequencing was in that scenario. It's pretty interesting.
Oh, and there's the Warglaves.
Yep.
I think Seiko was hovering that Chaos Strike almost instantly, but suddenly, one Warglaves later... Oh, he's still going to go for it. Okay.
Step up!
Just wants the Bone Chewer down over just equipping Warglaves that turn. Huh. Yeah, I think that's the correct response from both of us, honestly. Huh.
He also
that
gets
is not
spells
like-
cast while there isn't a Dirty Tricks in play, which can actually
True.
be pretty important.
It's
Not
definitely
good.
not a, I'll say, natural way to play, right? Normally you want to go, okay, I'll spend the most mana on one card on curve. It gets value this turn, and then it'll give myself more options to play multiple cards next turn.
Right.
Oh yeah, still. Doesn't mean Seiko, especially with this turn of just secrets and not a lot, means that you can just freely equip this Warglaves now.
Ugh. That is
Wait,
a very
does he-
nothing-looking hand, though.
You just Umberwings instead now, right? Because the power of Warglaves is the multi-swing. If he just wants damage, why not get 2 1/1s on the board, right? Still
Right.
push 2 damage from your face, so to speak, with the help of the weapon. And then just wait, because there's no minions to trade into, and that's the power of Warglaves. And what you're going to see, it's going to line up pretty well with Warglaves' hero power next turn into this Kartuk, if that's what Bozzzton chooses to play.
It is.
And Seiko ends up with 2 1/1s for his trouble, which is pretty solid, honestly.
Yeah, I was going to say the problem comes when you like draw a minion and then you haven't already invested the mana into the Warglaves, and then it gets slightly more awkward to like play your minion and then deal with the ambush token that's going to come out on the other side. But I think that's a pretty niche scenario based on the advantages that you just outlined.
Yeah. And I think with a board this big now, the Warglaves is always, even if it's not great, it's always good enough, because at worst, it will protect your board you have built.
Right.
And then the minions can come again afterwards, like, you know, with a Shadow Weaver and whatever Seiko draws.
Well, that's,
I actually like
that's
that
2/4/4 rushes. Don't be fooled in thinking it's a legendary that gets you a bunch of secrets. It's not. It's a pair of 4/4 rushes.
It's just an activator. That's all it really is. Not much else to really do, is there? Bozzzton has to just make what he's got work.
Yeah, he could just play one Faceless Corruptor and dagger and hit the 2/1 if he wants to hold out for the high roll off the top with Shadow Jeweler on the next turn. But I think a lot of
He doesn't have
secrets
that
have
many
been played
secrets
this
left.
game.
Does he have one? Wow. Well,
Yeah.
now I'll just triple check. Yes, there are no bamboozles in Bozzzton's list.
Is it cold?
Even though it is the a slight difference in Secret Rogue, it still has cut bamboozles. So, Seiko, no fear of these secrets anyway, for the trades at least.
Wait, why did this happen? Okay, fine.
Wait, he didn't want... Oh, I thought he wanted to trade, okay.
Yeah, same.
Dark in the skies.
Did you just forget Ambush was in play? Just play his turn too quickly? I'm very confused. Oh my
okay. Look
goodness.
at Bozzdton's face. He knows. That is a cheeky turn. He knows. He was losing this game very hard.
It's just 8-8, right?
Huh?
It's just 8-8 and then 6-6.
Yeah,
and then game.
Yeah. What's there to do now? It just doesn't matter. Kane's not enough because the damage just isn't there. He kills off the Shadow Weaver with the poison. And Bozzdton, raising his hands. At least he's honest about it. He's like, well, yep, that happened, and that is going to be game. Bozzdton goes 2-0 up against Seiko off the back of that Galakron draw. He was in trouble. No longer.
What? What just happened? That was absurd. Galakron, please. Colossus of the Moon's just chilling in hand. Didn't even get his chance to shine because you just ended the game too quickly. Unbelievable.
I was about to touch on before that happened the weakness of Rogue. I feel like we've been seeing over the Grandmasters, over this just rotation from Rogue at this point where it's at now, is sometimes it just doesn't quite line up to hit card draw, in which you end up starved, right? And it's not the first time we've seen it. We've seen it, fairly regularly, which I think is what the only thing keeping Rogue in check at the moment is that sometimes it just doesn't hit the card draw. But then, obviously, if you're going to just rip the Galakron and get an exceptional set of cards, the Kronk's obviously making the taunt, and then just having that Van Cleave to back it up.
He just drew, what, a 7-mana 20/20 that turn? Like,
more or less, yeah.
That's not okay. You
absolutely
sort
insane.
Pile all that up with the fact that Seiko just drew weapon, basically, for like 3 turns straight and just did not have any minion presence. Sure, I'm not sure what was going on in the end there with the ambush activation, which, sure, we can call that out, but otherwise, like, I don't really see what Seiko could have done that game. He just got Galakron scammed into oblivion.
Yeah, he did pretty rough overall, but we're moving swiftly on into a game number 3, and it's Highlander Hunter versus Demon Hunter. We'll get the spectator to just move the mouse off Demon Claws just in a second, no doubt. But for now, we are just seeing the nice clean up there with the help of that Chaos Strike, just to allow this Battle Fiend to keep chugging away at the face. Probably going to be Coin, Zixor, or Weapon. The Scale Rider not live, of course, with no dragon in hand.
Yeah. I like Coin Zixor because then your opponent's turn 3 is quite often Frozen Shadow Weaver. Then they have a decision to make about whether Frozen Shadow Weaver freezes minion or freezes face. Whereas if you play Stormhammer, the play is very straightforward for your opponent. So this at least makes your opponent make a decision, makes their turn more difficult, which is definitely something you should be in the business of doing.
I grow
yeah, and also, with the Scale Rider not being live, that means no dragon. So if you can do the same job a Stormhammer would do and get to hold a Stormhammer for when you maybe do draw a dragon, then that's looking a little bit stronger, a little bit more consistent.
The way this is going, this is always a dragon. Yep.
Oh, yeah. Worth the double trade as well. Well, I say double trade, it's not double trade, but the ability plus the Zixor trade. Well worth it, because Bozzdton knows now he can build on this. Even without Stormhammer, he can go Feywing into Boom Pistol Bully into Stormhammer a little bit later on, so it's going to look strong almost no matter what happens to him this turn.
Yeah, Kane is kind of ugly though. You see it on Bozzdton's face. It's the one play he didn't really have a super clean answer to, although let me fix my face real quick. Oh,
look, Saul, you've talked about this enough over the past few days. Hunter just draws the cards, okay?
Yeah.
And not only is it a little bit awkward because it's 3 health and Seiko doesn't have a good way to kill it, this Dwarven Sharpshooter is actually a Demon Hunter's nightmare because it just allows Bozzdton to effectively use his hero power to kill most of their minions.
Yep.
I grow impatient.
And this is going to start to stack up, isn't it? Because this Dwarven Sharpshooter is not going to die. And there can just be follow-up after that. Feywing, trade. It's going to look pretty spicy.
Yeah, the turn is slightly awkward for Bozzdton, though, just because he doesn't have a play that allows him to hero power as well. Animal Companion does fix that, but it doesn't allow him to get another free swing out of his weapon, which is also something that he'd be interested here. The absolute nuts there was, what, Primordial Explorer off the top, which I'm honestly quite surprised was not what got drawn from Bozzzton.
Sol's on the Hunter Salt train right now.
No, I just honestly like Bozzzton's been getting the run of the cards this series. Like I think
that's true.
I don't think that's a controversial statement. The way that we've seen like Horde Pillager into that Galakron come out.
Yeah, I'm still enjoying the rant you had in our Discord the other day.
Yeah.
It was glorious, guys. Sol had lost some games of Hearthstone on ladder, and he was, I'm going to say, unhappy with some classes.
I dropped from like 180 legend to like 1k. I lost 11 out of 12 games. Like, you know, it was like 10 in a row. Then I won one. Then I lost again. Then I gave up. And yeah,
and then Sol chose to tell us about it.
Yes, I wrote an essay in our Discord about everything that was wrong with Hearthstone at that point. Yeah.
We're not going to see Bozzzton use that Stormhammer though, so that is gone. The infinite swings aren't going to happen. But honestly, against Demon Hunter, they rarely do. You really, it is more of a priority to use it as a removal tool than that never-ending damage tool that you see in some other matchups. Although it feels great if you can do both, obviously. I do like Bozzzton's choice of saying, you know what, me holding on to this is not worth Seiko having an extra minion on board.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder.
And also, just a note as well, that Desert Spear is also fantastic against Demon Hunter, so there's still another weapon he can draw that can get some good work done too.
Really tough turn. I think Evasive Feywing is probably the most appealing thing because, you know, at least it can't be targeted. That's actually surprisingly useful in this scenario. But then what goes with it? Fairy Dragon feels miserable. Hero Power kind of feels like a waste. Tracking is floating mana, and you're not really that clear on what you want to be tracking for right now.
I do think you go double dragon, honestly. It feels
Good
bad,
old Bimmy
but...
and Jimmy.
It feels bad, but okay, the 2-1 kills the Fairy Dragon. Then what kills the Fey Wing is the question you want to force, right? The tracking did work out pretty well, getting hold of that Scavengers.
Wow, really? Was not expecting the Boom Pistol Billy this time.
Yeah, me neither. But, well, okay, I was post-tracking, though. Because I think just dropping the Fey Wing off curve would have felt a bit bad.
Right, he had tracking into Desert Spear plus Fairy Dragon as an option. Desert Spear was offered, but obviously Scavenger's Ingenuity has the insane out of the Zixor Prime that's in his deck right now.
And we can see the plan. Scavengers going into turn 7. Well, yeah, guess what snap getting played now? Yep, not a surprise. Get that Zixor Prime. And Demon Hunter generally has a bit of a problem dealing with all of this, because the Zixor Prime is often enough attacks to deal with at the board, right?
But is this fast enough? This is my problem. Like, you played Boom Pistol Billy, which was a minion that was just dead to 1 mana from your opponent. You then gave them 7 mana of development, which, yes, they couldn't play Battle Cry minions, but there's still a fair chunk of minions that were playable between, you know, Battle Fiends, Satyr Overseers, Altruists, whatever else.
And just weapons.
And just weapons, yeah, to then start pushing damage to your face. You're then having another turn of slow development where they then actually have a completely free turn to develop what they want. And then you need 4 6/6 rushes to catch you up and not die. Seems too slow to me.
It was dicey, honestly, because also the problem is, well, what if you track in and don't get something as good as Scavengers, right? Like, what if you just don't get a powerful late game plan, then what happens? Because that's why I think I did lean towards the Fey Wing and the Dragon.
Well, I liked the tracking. I was just curious as to why it wasn't Desert Spear immediately that turn. Then you can win board with the Desert Spear and the Fairy Dragon.
Yeah. Oh, Desert Spear would have been nice. And now this is one of the few times where Zixor does not quite get the job done, does it?
No.
Now there's what, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, it's like a million damage. Won't even bother counting it. I counted the board, glanced at the hand, 1 mana Altruist, all you need to know.
Spectral Sight is cheap enough. Doesn't really matter what the card does, it's
Yep.
just the number in the top left corner is all he's interested in.
Would have easily been enough damage anyway, right? He didn't need that much damage coming from Altreus. There's the concede. Seiko getting the win with his Demon Hunter at last over Bozzzton's Highlander Hunter, but still got a bit of an uphill climb now, because if there's a couple of decks that Highlander Hunter can get some work done, it's versus Priest and Quest Warlock. And by no means are these matchups just foregone conclusions, do not get me wrong, but I would feel more comfortable sitting in the Hunter seat than the Warlock or the Priest seat right now.
Yes, agreed. I think the Priest matchup is arguably worse. It seems one of those matchups where just about whichever way you slice it, unless there's some serious shenanigans coming out from the Priest, like if it goes fast, Hunter tends to win. If it goes slow, Hunter tends to win. You know, it just doesn't really seem to matter which way the matchup plays out. Hunter just seems to have the edge. Quest Warlock, on the other hand, it doesn't take a great deal to stop Hunter in its tracks, because a lot of the times with certain draws, Highlander Hunter is very linear in the way it approaches, and suddenly, you know, healing for 16 on one turn can really shut off a lot of very linear approaches from your opponent. So depending on, you know, whether they have a very damage-based draw or whether they have a very board-based draw, Dark Skies / Moarg Netherbreath can blow those out quite convincingly. I do still agree with you that, though, it is a slightly favored matchup for the Highlander Hunter.
Yeah, looks like we are going to be going into the Hunter versus the Priest matchup, though. So again, the worse off one, I would say, for Seiko. Just trying to get the worst matchup done first, see if we can get a win there. For now, Bozzzton, again, is playing that Escape Mana Saber. For me, personally, Bozzzton not playing the what I would say the most well-rounded or the most consistent Hunter list that I've seen, but it's one he's stuck with for a few weeks now, and Bozzzton looking a little bit dicey at the start of Grandmasters Round Robin. Well, he's still here, right? So it's doing something, as he's pretty consistently submitted this Hunter as well.
Tough mulligan from Bozzzton. Obviously, like I said, I think Hunter can win this matchup going very fast and very slow. But this is kind of a tale of two different hands right now. The Mana Saber Dino Tamer Brand combination is honestly pretty effective looking in the matchup. But at the same time, he might want to mulligan more aggressively to find 1 and 2 drops. So I do like the single keep of just Dino Tamer Brand. And he's rewarded with a Blazing Battle Mage.
And honestly, it's one of the ways Hunter can lose versus Priest, and it doesn't happen super consistently, but if Priest gets to play a minion, it sticks, and then they buff it, and you just can't quite kill it, whether that's a Fate Weaver a little bit later on, or a Veil Weaver now, it can be tricky, right? If you don't get access to a weapon, then Priest can keep you off the board pretty well, whilst keeping their minion either healed up or just too high health to bother anyway. So you can get pushed off a little bit sometimes, but it is not that.
Sounds like you're talking about Shaxi Priest now, Raven. You're speaking my language. Let's go.
What, literally the best deck to ladder with day one? So is that the deck you're talking about?
Bad. Oh, people spectacularly missing the point of that tweet. Made me so happy.
Now, though, the Tolveir actually getting a good job done. Very similar to Bone Chewer Roller that isn't in Bozzzton's list. See some differences, a little bit stronger versus Rogue. It's not susceptible to Backstab Seal Fate, of course, which it's been damaged. But it does have some negatives as well, as it doesn't really get any bigger either.
What do you even do? Alright, Zigzaw's a good draw. That certainly helps clean up a great deal of this mess, but Bozzzton's going to have to run every implication through his mind of this Zigzaw being committed to the board right now. But again, remember that this is a 1 Shadow Madness list from Seiko.
What if he just doesn't play Zigzaw?
Just kills 1, plays Primordial Explorer instead?
Yeah, I think that's just better. Nothing bad can... Oh, the Primordial Explorer gets stolen and kills your 2-1. Okay. It doesn't die, which means you get it back. So I think that's actually just better. You still have a dragon for Rottnest, because obviously Primordial Explorer summon gets you a dragon. You rip a Dragon Queen on Yggdrasil like an absolute god. And yeah, I think this is actually better. Just remove the shenanigans, right?
What about regular Alexstrasza?
So this is the one matchup where I would consider it. You know what? I'd probably consider it versus Quest Warlock as well. Because with the opening that Bozzzton's seen Seiko have, with these 2 minions that to trade into, he's not really pumping any damage through, right?
Yeah.
So the natural or the regular Alexstrasza would open up options to deal a lot of damage. My problem is if he's got a board to really cash in on that anyway, then does he even need the Alexstrasza, and is just an extra on curve Dragon Queen just stronger on average?
Yeah. I think not picking Dragon Queen is mostly nonsense in just about every scenario when you are just naturally playing.
Questlock, though.
When you are just naturally playing a Highlander deck. But yeah, I mean, sure, that might be something. But yeah, I think the only reason I bring it up is, if you're playing Hunter and you're able to Alexstrasza your opponent for value on turn 9, something's gone very badly that game, because you were supposed to have done that work already. However, something has gone very badly this game. Like, Seiko spent the entire time just ahead on board up until now. So it was something I wanted to bring up, but yeah, I think it's nonsense not to take Dragon Queen when you're already playing Highlander.
Well.
Wah.
So, although, yes, there is the negative outcome here of Seiko getting his getting Zigzaw, it is on a better turn for it to happen to Bozzzton, right? Because he keeps his poison if that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
And also, Seiko doesn't often do anything else. And if his whole turn is he killed Atutu, then okay, he can just follow up. But this... Oh, I think I would have traded the Zigzaw first there, honestly.
Wow. Cowardice.
I'm not even
Raven.
joking.
Cowardice.
With Scavengers in hand. Doesn't guarantee him because he plays a Griffin and he plays the Mana Saber, so I guess that's the reason. Yeah. But still, I think I would have just traded it away there.
I don't know, I just think you're pushing so much damage here that if Seiko has to spend his entire turn 5 playing Shadow Madness on your Zigzaw, you're probably just getting there with Dino Tamer Bran, Unleash the Hounds, and Hero Powers.
And also, funnily enough, it's kind of the same issue of last turn, where is Seiko really going to Shadow Madness this Zigzaw, or is he going to Shadow Madness the poison and kill off your 6/5?
Right,
and
exactly.
the 2/3, right? So actually, this is not giving him a good Zigzaw Shadow Madness turn. Now, only one more turn away till big Dino time.
Bozzzton needs a play here. Weirdly enough, okay, he draws the Griffin, so now is Mana Saber the better draw of Scavengers? Because he just jams
I guess,
it?
yeah, because he can play it, yeah.
This is just better.
Yep, it's worked out better in the long run. But did only work out better because he drew exactly Griffin that turn. That could have got dicey real quick.
Mm-hmm. Actually, there's no... Those are the only outcomes remaining, right? When
Yes,
after he drew the
correct,
Griffin, he only had Mana Saber left? Okay.
Yep, it's the same as normal, but with one Mana Save, so that one extra beast changes it around just a touch.
Right,
It's
there's
still
no
only three
Face Stalker secret package nonsense or anything like that?
No, yep,
okay.
still just 3 beasts total.
Okay.
Ooh. Oh, is it ever Boom Pistol? No, it's not. Never mind, it doesn't work.
It does. Wait, what do you want to do? I think Griffin.
Oh, no, it does.
I think Griffin double trade attack Boom Pistol
That's
is pretty strong.
That's what I wanted to do, but I was trying to do it the wrong order in my mind. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But that is correct. Yes, I would like that if I was Bozzzton.
Because I think, obviously, like on the surface, you know, big Dino go raw, right? You can just make the trade, slam Dino Tamer Bran, but you are super vulnerable to Soul Mirror if you do that. Mm-hmm. Not only is your, you know, obviously your King Crush dead to the Soul Mirror, but also because of the trade that you took, your Mana Saber is also dead to Soul Mirror in that scenario.
Yeah, this is really nice. This Aldrin means he gets 6 on next turn as well. So, if he wants it, obviously, but still, it's just very, very nice play overall. Boom Pistol locks out Galakron, locks out Krunks and some other options too. And now it's just looking great. And if this Saber takes some removal, this is just pretty solid in general.
Mm-hmm.
I do think, yeah, I was going to say, it's definitely Time Rip there, because he wasn't doing much with the extra mana anyway, right? Oh, he's going to play both. Okay,
yeah, he's 100% playing both. It's just he did it the technically correct way. It's just one of those nagging feelings in the back of a Hearthstone player's brain, which was, I'm always playing both of these cards this turn. However, this one gives me a random card in hand, so it's technically correct if I do it this way around.
Well, here comes Bran.
You'll find me wherever the action is.
Yeah, Seiko closes the eyes. Having just used both of those hard removals, he's in trouble. And that card is nowhere near as exciting here as some of you might be thinking it is.
Does that renew?
Yeah. Yep.
He wants another death.
Oh!
And he got it.
Right down the middle.
Can even Fate Weaver now. Which means he can get in a heal. Seems reasonable.
How about a new rhyme?
Was that really much better?
Then what, Fate Weaver heal and leaving out the 2/4? Probably, right? Like, you still heal for 2 by killing a 2/4.
Yeah, but then you have a potentially faceless next turn on the Fate Weaver.
Sure. It's true.
Still very close overall. Do just like the Alex Straza here. You just saw what your opponent had to do to actually clear for a couple of turns in a row. Make them clear for a third turn in a row.
Agreed. You are exposing yourself to a vulnerability to Soul Mirror that you really haven't had up until now because of the way your threats have been staggered out.
Life and hope of will fight.
But you can still get dragons with nice shapes that avoid that.
Like those?
Quickly.
Yeah, close enough.
Let's play the... I guess he just has to play... Yep, Netherwing first makes sense anyway. Keep the health on the Squall.
Yes, yeah, Netherwing first.
Because that is one of those minions of a nice shape, if we're talking Soul Mirrors, right? So we can Soul Mirror and heal. Leaves 5 damage on board, goes up to 11, 7 with the hero power. It's still looking rough, isn't it?
You know what he really wanted to draw this turn? Penance.
Oh, okay.
Right, Soul Mirror, you have your own spell
Penance
damage
with
plus
spell
2
damage.
guy, and then you penance for the spell damage.
Oh yeah, that would be sick.
$50-50 lethal, it looks like, coming on the following turn. If he plays a minion, he's dead to Unleash the Hounds. If he heals, he's dead half the time to Dragonbane.
There's the heal. Still draws Bozzzton can get that can help this as well. Could get. Oh, he couldn't. Sorry, because he's only got 8 mana. He's overloaded. That'll do it.
Kill command off the top means Bozzzton is going to march on, and unfortunately, that means Seiko's season has come to an end. But still, a very successful one for a player who had his ups and downs, his trials and tribulations in the previous year, but I think has refocused this year and shown everyone that he is a phenomenal Hearthstone player. He did have that kind of underground reputation as low-key the best player in the world at some point, a couple of years ago, where he was really designing lineups and practicing with a bunch of players and, really putting in a lot of hard work on behalf of a lot of other people. And he was getting a lot of shout-outs from a lot of very successful players. So I'm very happy to have seen him progress to the level now where he's putting a very, very good showing again here in Grandmasters. But it's Bozzzton that's going to be the one marching onward.
Yeah, Bozzzton as well. You know, congratulations to him. And honestly, for him, one of the few, say, original Grandmasters that you could argue may feel like he has something to prove, right? When we've got the likes of previous world champions, you know, Thais, Kalento, the quality of player with proven top level, almost best results you could possibly get. Bozzzton hasn't really hit that yet. So again, just him still being alive here, and maybe he can book a spot at Worlds, could be the first massive result Bozzzton can get to really put his name up there with some of the world greats. So I'm excited to see how that continues to be played out for him.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, he really should start feeling like he belongs, and I'm sure he absolutely does at this point. This is something that he did talk about himself last year when we interviewed him, but I certainly hope he's come around now to, you know, expect that he belongs in this kind of company, because I mean this with no disrespect to the players involved, but he's now outlasted Orange, he's outlasted Kalento, he's outlasted Pavel. He's fighting for a spot at Worlds while Hunter Ace is facing against relegation later on. He's progressing. Exactly. He's progressing through a bracket now that, you know, Viper and RDU and all of these, Viper and various other potential names and Seiko that he's just defeated are no longer progressing through, and yet his name is still in there. So for sure, Bozzzton is in it for the long haul. He is here to stay. So if you don't know, now you know.
Yeah, pretty impressive overall so far, and we are not done yet. We still have 2 more matches left today. It's going to be Bozzzton versus Bunny Hopper up next, and then we're going to have our relegation match, our first relegation match of the weekend after that to finish off our day here in the European region. But we are going to go to a break while we let Bozzzton have some time before he gets ready for his next match. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with some more Hearthstone Grandmasters.
Hello, Hearthstone fans, and welcome to episode 7 of